Well, folks, we are happy to have a man named Paul Amato with us today who's going to share his story. Paul is from the Boston area and works in IT, knows a lot about video and audio, something that's always been fascinating to me. So, Paul, welcome to Beat Diabetes.
Thanks, Dennis. Great to be here, actually.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your story. And Paul, just take us back to where it all began. Well, let me just throw this out. You have weighed as much as 400 pounds, so you've been a pretty big guy. You've struggled with weight. Tell us how long that struggle went on. Was that something that you dealt with in your childhood? And then go ahead and tell us how it leads into diabetes, or led into diabetes.
Sure. Yeah, so it's something that I've struggled with all my life, ups and downs with my weight. When I was a teenager, I lost a lot of weight on a diet that my aunt told me about. She said, just eat eggs and bacon. Don't eat any bread or, potatoes. And didn't realize it at the time. Yeah, I didn't realize it was the Atkins diet. And I lost a ton of weight. And I kept the weight off for a while. And then slowly built it back up. And then dropped it again, and so on, up until about a year ago in March, I had enough. I was topping out at around 450, and that was just getting scary, and decided to go to a clinic that my wife is going to lose weight, to see what they had to offer. And just to back up a little bit, I've been pre-diabetic for years at 6.3. Didn't seem to move, always just stayed at 6.3, just kept thinking to myself that over time I would just change my habits a little bit and it would go away. Even though my doc would tell me, you need to change your diet, just didn't listen. So when I went to go see a doctor at the clinic for weight loss, she thought it would be a good idea to get blood tests because my last blood tests were over 6 months ago, and from that time, and I was at a 6.3, and she just wanted to make sure that everything was still the same. Get my labs on.
You had gone from pre-diabetic to beyond the marker of diabetes. Tell us your age. How old are you, and how long ago was this that you registered the 6.9?
Oh, okay, so it's about a 1 year anniversary this past March. I think around the 11th I went in to get the blood test done. So it's been just over 1 year. I'm 60 years old now. 59, but now I'm 60, yeah.
What did you think about that? What was your emotional reaction to find out you were officially diabetic?
Absolutely frightened to no end. And the first thing I did was Dr. Google, which is never a good idea. Once I got over life expectancy links, I started to look for how to reverse diabetes, and your channel came up right away. And at that point, I just binged your channel. I tried to watch everything I possibly could about it. And then after watching your channel, other people populated my feed, like Jason Fung and Barry and so on.
Let me just ask you this. You had no reservations. I mean, you probably quickly realized I was no doctor. That didn't bother you too much?
That didn't bother me. When I was diagnosed at the 6.9, I was afraid to eat anything. I had no idea what to do. And I was just waiting for a call from the doctor to just give me some guidance. But what you were talking about, low carb, being the answer, just made sense to me right away.
Okay. Well, your background in Atkins certainly kind of prepared you for that. So did it take several months to really make the decision to do the low carb, or did you jump on that fast?
I jumped on it right away. As you mentioned, I'm used to the Atkins diet and finding ways to make things low carb. I like to cook. So that was easy to follow. To me, it was the answer to get this thing moving as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so you you saw from your A1C that you were diabetic. And if you watch my channel, I emphasize doing your blood sugar tests frequently and even post-meal tests. Did you start doing that, or did you just say, I'll do the low carb and this should fix it?
Two things stuck with me watching your videos was eat to the meter. So the first thing I did was to go out and buy a glucose meter and start testing like crazy, using your guidance about testing before, about an hour or so after I eat to see where my numbers would end up. And then even more because I really wanted to see what my blood sugars were doing at that time.
I'm sure that was quite an education for you.
Yeah, it was. It was. And then I finally was able to convince my doctor to give me a CGM, which has really helped out a lot to understand exactly what's going on when I eat.
Yeah. So did that provide some motivation for you?
A lot. When I got the meter, I'd rather see a good number than a big meal. So I enjoyed finding things to eat and then seeing, maybe going up to 120 and then coming down again and not seeing a big spike. So the numbers were more important than the food. They still are.
Yeah, well, that has always been my attitude as well. So it didn't take you long before you started getting some positive reinforcement that the direction you were going was working. It must have been encouraging.
Absolutely. I'll have to say that I've never seen a really bad spike since I got the diagnosis. Obviously, I wasn't testing before then. But seeing those numbers come up to where I thought they were good, it was a lot of motivation, and the fear kept creeping in. So it makes it easier for me anyway to follow what you preach.
Well, between fear and hope, those are some pretty powerful motivators. So what was your plan in terms of going back to the doctor? Did you say, I'm going to do this for 3 months, 6 months, and then go see where my A1C is? Or what was your plan?
So I have a great doctor. I've had him for a long time. And the plan was to do every 3 months to go there and weigh in so he could see that I'm losing weight and do an A1C test. And that's what I've been doing since last March. After about, I'd say 2 or 3 months after diagnosis, I went in and I lost quite a few pounds already. I don't remember how much at that time. Just I've lost over 150 pounds since last March.
1 year's time, you lost 150 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what a lot of people keep saying when they see me. So that first A1C came back at 5.7, and that was just really exciting to me to see that I could drop it that quickly. I tried for a long time to get my pre-diabetic number of 6.3 down. To be honest, I never really took it seriously, so it never moved. But to see the way it moved this time, to get it to 5.7 after only a couple of months or so was really encouraging. And then the next 3 months pass, go back to the doctor, weigh in, and see that I have an A1C of 5.5, which is great. So now my goal is to try to get it even lower.
So what would you say if somebody said, well, Paul, your A1C went down because you lost weight, but it really has nothing to do with the low-carb diet that you're eating? How would you respond to that?
I would laugh. I know it's the reason why that my A1C went down. I also understand that the weight loss has a part in it as well. But I would say the low carb meals and counting everything I eat has really done the job for me.
Yeah. How do you eat these days, Paul? Do you eat 3 meals a day? Do you snack? And then what would be a good example of a couple of the meals that you frequently eat?
Sure. I try to do 3 meals, a small breakfast in the morning, maybe some eggs, coffee. Sometimes I'll skip lunch following your concept of restricted eating. I just feel like not eating for that particular day because maybe my number is a little funny the day before. And then a decent meal, a lot of salads, a lot of Caesar salads with protein, whether that be chicken or steak or whatever on top. Snacking, I know you preach not to snack, but once in a while I do like to grab some pecans or some walnuts and snack on something low carb in between. I try not to though.
And so I would assume that your CGM or your glucose meter has confirmed that these salads that you're eating really don't do much to your blood sugar. Is that right?
Correct. It barely moves when I eat a Caesar salad with a low carb dressing and some protein on it. I might see a small 10-point rise or so.
Yeah, and that's definitely no big deal at all. So you must feel pretty good at this point. I mean, you were hovering at 6.3, which is not a safe place to be, especially as you reach those latter years, the late 60s and 70s and so forth. And now you've kind of done what a lot of people don't think is possible. You reversed your A1C. You're going backwards instead of forwards. You're getting better instead of worse. Everybody says diabetes is progressive. You just get worse and worse. Right. You've proved that to be not always true, haven't you?
Right. And I sometimes I get into online arguments with people about the word reversed or remission. It doesn't matter to me what you want to call it. I know that it's gone backwards, and that's where I want to be. So
yeah. So when you started out attacking your diabetes, was that foremost on your mind, or were you thinking two things? Number one, I got to get my glucose down. Number two, I want to lose weight. Was it an equal thing, or did the weight loss kind of come incidentally?
It was both, but the diabetes weighed more heavily on me. Knowing, reading about the complications that can occur, hearing the stories, and not wanting to ever face that. It was more about getting my A1C below diabetic levels and below pre-diabetic levels as well. The weight loss has always been on my mind. In my head, I knew getting to this age that being that weight is not a good thing, and probably would have killed me before the diabetes, the way I look at it. So it worked hand in hand, luckily, that the weight just kept melting off on me. I mean, it's a little slower right now. I'm at 290 at this moment, and I plan to get down into the low 200s to my goal, hopefully by the fall.
Yeah, well, that is a great goal. And, I find it kind of fascinating, really, that and so many of the people that have struggled with weight are just exactly where you were and where you are. And that is, they knew they were overweight. It's not that they didn't know that, and it's not that they didn't want to change it, but they just somehow lacked the will, or whatever you want to call it, to really make that change. And then suddenly they get diagnosed with diabetes, they find low carb, and the will is there somehow. How is it you had the will to change your diet for diabetes, but you didn't have the will for years and years and years, as you were into 300s and 400s of pounds? Somehow you couldn't defeat that monster until you got diagnosed diabetic.
That's a good question. When I think about it, I guess thinking about the potential dangers of being overweight didn't seem as important or dangerous to me than when I got the diagnosis of having type 2 diabetes. I had the motivation over the years to do it here and there. I would lose weight and then gain it all back. But the fear that entered me when I got my labs back has stuck with me since. And that's really been the motivating factor for me to lose this weight. I can't really explain why beforehand that the thought of the things that could possibly happen to me, being overweight, didn't stop me from eating the way I was eating. So I don't know.
Okay, well, let's consider this, Paul. You are 60. You could easily live, especially now that you've changed your diet and you've lost some weight, you could easily live another 25 years or maybe even 30 to 85 or 90. And could you see yourself eating this way and living this way for another 20, 30 years?
Absolutely, yeah. As I said before, I'm very familiar with eating low carb. So it to me, I find ways to make things that I like, low carb pizzas on low carb wraps, that type of thing, or other things I want to eat that I'll just find a recipe that'll work for me, that will remind me of the foods that I was eating before. I haven't really gone back to any of the old foods that I was eating before. I just don't want to see those spikes, so I'd rather just find ways to make things that are similar, that I like in a low carb way.
Mike will hold us to task, won't he?
Exactly. So Mike the meter and eating to the meter. And the other thing that stuck with me that you've talked about is giving your pancreas a rest.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me, and especially on days where I decide like maybe I just won't. I'll restrict myself from snacking during the day, maybe skip a meal, that type of thing.
Your story is fascinating to me. It's amazing that you were hovering at 6.3 for apparently quite a number of years, and so overweight. Normally, when you see an overweight person, at least when I do, someone that's significantly overweight, I think, well, chances are they're diabetic, especially if they're beyond middle age. Right. You've got a good constitution. And it didn't take you long at all to whip the monster of diabetes. And as a bonus, you lost a lot of weight. Some people say you shouldn't lose too much weight too fast. I don't know the rule about that, but I guess you didn't have any real symptoms of problems by losing all that weight as quickly as you did.
No, I didn't. And I wasn't trying to starve myself during this past year to lose the weight. It just happened with the low carb eating. As I mentioned before, again, doing low carb in the past, losing a lot of weight. Every time I've done this particular diet or way of eating, weight has melted off of me. So it's just been quick, and I didn't have to starve myself to do it.
Yeah. So your recent blood work, how does it look apart from the fact that your A1C has gone down? Did you get triglyceride score, cholesterol? How's everything else looking?
So the only thing I've done is A1C tests since the blood tests I talked about over a year ago. But even then, everything looked good. My cholesterol is usually very good, and my doctor would always be surprised because he'd say, someone your size, typically, you'd have high cholesterol, and I'd be under 200 every time I'd get my blood tested. I was slightly over cholesterol that last time, like at 207, I think. But when I go see my doctor this coming April in about a month, I will have him do a full lab work on me, because I'm really interested in seeing where my cholesterol is and my other labs will land. But I'll tell you, every time I've done low carb meals, people will tell me that, oh, your cholesterol must be through the roof. And every time I go to the doctors after doing low carb, my cholesterol is usually 180 or above that, or definitely under 2. So.
Yeah, that's great. Was your doctor surprised when you came up with that 5.7 from 6.9 in such a short time?
Yeah. He's a family doctor that we've known for a long time, and he just like, wow, you don't have diabetes anymore. He started laughing. He's just really happy to see that that number come down so quickly and the weight coming off me.
Okay. So he actually laughed about it. He thought that was almost funny. I guess he doesn't see that a lot. I don't think too many doctors do see that kind of progress.
No, I don't think so. But he's been great. He's really excited for me, and I love going into my doctor's appointments now and asking him for an A1C test because I know the numbers are going to be good.
Oh, that's great. Well, Paul, any words of encouragement for people that may be watching? I know practically every video we put out, there are some newly diagnosed diabetics that are scared to death about their situation. They need some encouragement. Give them a word of encouragement as we wrap up this interview.
Sure. First thing I would say is once you get the diagnosis, you're going to have information overload, and you need to step back and just take a deep breath and try to learn and understand things that you're going to need to eat to bring your numbers down. Also, when you do that, it's probably a good idea to watch Beat Diabetes, because that's where I think everything changed for me, Dennis, in terms of turning this around, because the two dietitians that I've gone to see want me to, let's not say want me to eat, but they recommend brown rice and quinoa and things that I know will spike me. And I just think that you got to know your own body and eat to the meter, as you preach all the time. The other thing I would say is, if you're pre-diabetic, I would treat it like you're full-blown diabetic and change your ways immediately to get that number back into reverse to pre-diabetic to below pre-diabetic levels. I wish I did that when I first got that first A1C from my doctor that told me I was in the pre-diabetic range. But if I can do it, anybody can.
If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.